Welcome to Subramani. Uh, One very big mistake which we make is our observation, and we think that we can use our observation to extrapolate over long periods of time over various businesses. I have a friend who would stand at a vada pav stall and he would be calculating the income of the vada pav vendor. And I used to make fun of him, saying, "Look, at this rate, you will even project the GDP of India, saying how many such shops would be there and how much would they be selling." Now, your personal observation is not always very useful. Now, what happens is we have learned over a very long period of time that. When the signal is red, you should not cross the road, or when you are in a jungle safari and you see a tiger, you should not get carried away and try to touch it or climb down. Those are important observations to be learning, because if you did not learn that a lion kills for its food, and you would have ended up as the lion's dinner. So it was important to learn. But today, in such a complex investment environment, does your observation really matter? Does your observation lead to bias, and is your observation correct? For example, I have made money, lots of money, simply by buying and holding MNC shares. So the Colgate, Siemens, Cummins, Nestle, Hindustan Unilever, and such companies. So they made money for me for the last 30, 40 years. Though, of course, in 40 years or 45 years, there could be 10 years of underperformance. But still, overall, they paid good dividends and they made good money for me. So based on that, do I conclude? And in the 1980s and 90s, I come to the conclusion that the best corporate governance standards, we did not have such thing, but we did not use such words. But I always thought that the MNCs have far better corporate governance than a typical Marwadi, Gujarati, or a South Indian managed Murugappa or Chettiar group or things like that. It was very firmly entrenched in my mind that MNCs have better ethics, morals, etc. Then too much of information came our way, and we found that very many family managed businesses, like say Murugappa Group or Sundaram Group or Acer, were actually very, very well managed, and they did much better than the so-called MNCs. HDFC Limited was a great example of saying, wow, this company did very well. But if I had gone to my 1980s avatar, and I would have said, oh, I don't know, I don't want to trust, I do not know how is this promoter, which was true, because it took me a long time, maybe till the 1990s, to decide that okay, this share need not be sold and it can be held. It takes a long time for us to know which personal observation to use and which not to use. But to say, I am using this toothpaste, so therefore the world must be using, therefore it is a good buy, is wrong. Because even if you were to quote Peter Lynch, I don't think Peter Lynch said if you are using Colgate toothpaste and you assume everybody is using Colgate toothpaste, therefore Colgate is a good buy. He did not say that. He said it's a good hint for you to do further research. After that, you sit and do research and find out whether that personal observation is to be used. Like the personal observation that you saw a friend being eaten by a lion was proof that lions will eat you. You don't have to go and test with every lion, right? So you have one life and you will lose it. Or the fact that a friend of yours was killed by a cobra didn't mean that all snakes were poisonous, because then you would be very, very careful, ultra careful. You may not have been able to walk. Remember, those are the times when you had no shoes, right? So you had to understand that a poisonous snake kills, but all lions kill, and all lions are poisonous as far as your life is concerned. And that up to 12 feet, a tiger can climb a tree, so can a lion, right? And to be able to escape from a tiger or a lion, you have to be very good at climbing trees, and you have to be able to climb up to 20 feet if you want to be really safe. Again, a personal observation, which if you did not have, you would have been a lion's dinner or a tiger's dinner, right? So some of these observations work, some of them don't work, and your ability to know what works and what does not work is going to create wealth for you or create disaster for you. Or you will be ultra careful and you will not invest. You will not realize that some of your personal observations were wrong, and therefore you lost money, right? So to say which part of the personal observation will work is very difficult. For example, this is a great example to be given from the Middle Ages. I believe Sweden believed that they were a far superior country and they should attack everybody else and try to own them, right? So typically, like a king would think. Unfortunately or fortunately, they did some research and they found that they were not so good after all. So they decided to concentrate internally on improving rather than on going out and attacking others like what other European powers were doing. So that is something which they did well. So using what happened was Sweden used data instead of using just personal observation, thinking, oh, we are superior, which is what happens to you and me. If I put through my equity portfolio and I find that I'm underperforming the index, there is absolutely no logic for me to be in my own portfolio. I might as well sell all of that and put it into an index fund, but I will not do it because I keep fooling myself into thinking that, oh, I can use all my personal observation and decide to buy a Colgate or an Alphabet or an Apple, and I know that these companies will do well substantially. So that kind of fooling oneself keeps happening. In fact, I don't think I have any great ability to predict the future, and I know that I don't have any great ability to predict the future. That is one thing which is helping me. I refuse to fall at the feet of gurus and say I'm going to learn from this guru. Yes, I've learned a lot from gurus, and there is no doubt, but you cannot do a copy paste. That is something which you have to learn. I mean, if that is the only thing you learn from me, that also is good. For example, I'm not going to in this channel be able to tell you that I bought Colgate, therefore you should buy Colgate. I can tell you I bought Colgate last 45 years, I have made money. What you have to buy, you have to decide. It's not a tip that Colgate will do well or Asian Paints will do well or ITC will do badly. I have no clue. Go and do your own research, right? And personal observations are not very useful over very long periods of time because you do not know how to apply it. It will be very difficult to think that along with personal observation bias doesn't come in. For example, I used to be, I must owe this, I don't want to name this guy. He was not very, he's a persona non grata for many people. I had just come out of my CA. I was 85, 1985 we are talking about, and I was terribly biased against PSU, right? So I thought PSUs are all inefficient, they'll do badly, the employees have nothing at stake. Therefore, one should never buy a PSU. Then, when the IPOs started, sometime in the 1990, 91, when the PSU IPOs came, I was biased and I would say I would not touch. Then this guy helped me saying, fight your bias. It's your personal observation that one company which you saw did this, but remember that look at the monopoly that companies like say Indian Oil have, right? If you go slightly beyond Delhi on the north, you will find only Indian Oil, and if you go to places like Ladakh and all, the army depends completely on Indian Oil. So they will have market share, they will have size, and they will have a low PE, they will have a good dividend yield. So it may not be the best, but it is not a share to be missed. And then I made money on PSU shares. So I bought PSU shares, sold. Currently I have PSU shares because I found them attractive at a particular price. At 22 rupees, BHEL was definitely a good buy, and at 70 rupees, it was definitely a good sell. So bought it at 22, sold some at 70, holding on to some, right? So this is a bias which I would never have been able to do this transaction if I had not fought my personal observation. Then you do personal observation that companies based in Hyderabad are not good, companies based in Delhi are not good, companies based in of Marwari community is not good, or you come to a conclusion that Marwari community is great. You say MNCs are good, then you see a couple of examples of MNCs creating other subsidiaries to put all their profits there. Then you say, oh, MNCs are not good. So among all this conflict, using your personal observation versus data. For example, if I think I'm doing very well in my equity portfolio, I have to compare it with the index or with a couple of good fund houses and then say that, oh, well, I'm not doing so well, why should I be there? So take your personal observation, use it. For example, you have to know that if you go near a line, it will kill you. But also use data to check your personal observation whether it is right. And please don't misquote Peter Lynch. Peter Lynch did not say just because you're using Colgate toothpaste, Colgate is a good buy. He said look at it, look at the data, do an analysis and then decide, right? So don't miss out that whole process. Don't just quote him and saying, oh, He said so many people are driving a Maruti Suzuki, so Maruti Suzuki is a good buy. Yes, Maruti Suzuki may have been a good buy at 3,500 or at 4,000, and it may not be a good buy at 10,000. I don't know. I'm just guessing, right? So use your innovation, but use your personal observation, but use innovation, see the impact of innovation, use your personal observation, listen to gurus, but ultimately make up your own mind based on all these kind of inputs. Thank you.